Hey everyone, welcome to Roll for First, your bi-weekly Magic the Gathering podcast where we talk about Magic the Gathering. I'm Dylan Beal, and I'm joined with my very good friend, Dan Forz, friend of the pod from Mechado Podcast. We talk about them every once in a while. Very good podcast. Don't forget to go check it out. What's up, Dan?
Oh, thanks, Dylan. Yes, okay, so I guess I introduced myself. I'm Dan. I've known Ian Ian. Oh, sorry, Ian is my other podcast. I've known Dylan for a long time. We play Magic and stuff, play video games together, went to school together, that kind of stuff. And I am a co-host on a podcast that is about nerdy anime stuff. So you can go watch that if you're into that. So I don't know.
Yeah, so I brought Dan along today. Not because James left last minute, not because Dan is the best modern player of all time, not because of any particular reason other than he's a good friend of it. He said he'll come on. But no, we're just going to talk about some modern because that's what we've been playing the most and kind of what we got into Magic together with, sort of. So I know, Dan, you basically got in, a couple years ago at this point, doing mostly draft and then standard a little bit and then kind of more focused on modern right now. And
yes.
I never really got super into drafting, and standard rotated a little bit too quickly for my taste, and I kind of found a spot with modern. And so that's what I kind of want to talk about. So I guess first, what decks do you play in modern?
So I started with, a long time ago, I bought this horrible budget mono red burn. You've probably seen the list on like MTG Goldfish or something. And then I never played it. I just bought it and I thought it was cool. And I like sleeved it up in these nice sleeves. And then I never played it. And then finally when Dylan and my friend Ian got into it and they started doing it like actually competitively, I was like, okay, maybe I'll actually like build something. So my first deck was actual burn, and that went through like the craziest process. Like I said, I had like the super budget deck, and then I got to like mono red and non-budget mono red burn, and then finally I'm at full like Boros burn, splashing green, that kind of thing. And then just recently I decided to make the full commitment, and then I bought full blue-white control, whatever full blue-white control even is. But I have like some just pile of cards that's worth way too much money that I play. So that's like my main deck right now.
So what is it about modern that you like the most? So like,
don't you mean Azorius? You said, is it?
What do you what do you like about modern the most?
It's super spiky. Oh my gosh, that's my favorite part. Like you show up, right, and everyone else has their like $900 pile of cards, and you sit down, and there's no fun involved. Like if they say they're here for fun, they're freaking lying to you, man. So you put down your pile of cards, right, and you draw them, and then you either like walk away from that table extremely upset or extremely happy, and there's no in between because modern is really bullshit, and that's the only way that's gonna happen, right? So that's why I like modern.
See, I think that's why I like it too, but like in, I guess, a positive light. So I sit down and I play standard, and it's, I don't know, it feels, the decks don't feel like they have like a personality like they do in modern, right? Like you sit down and you're like, oh, I'm playing like mono red burn, I guess. Like this is like the red deck, everyone, every format has a red deck. And it's like, all right, well, I'm playing against the 50 million different controls or a bunch of different mid-range decks or the stompy decks, and you have the standard decks that are like standard, right? You always see like a stompy-ish deck, whether it's Gruul or green, and you always see the control decks and always see the red decks. But in modern, it's like the decks feel like they have a personality, they have a history, they have a story. It's really cool. Like we were talking a little bit in the pre-show about it, but like modern burn is like the pinnacle of burn almost. Like it's perfect, it's calculated. People have been sculpting this deck for like a decade now.
Yeah.
Or you play against something like Azorius control, blue-white control, and it's like the perfect like embodiment of blue-white control. It has like some of the best counters. It's all about like gaining life and then like getting advantage, and then you're like putting your Snapcaster mages in, and that's really cool. And there's additions to it throughout time, and like Teferi comes in and Jace gets unbanned, and you're like, wow, it's a real deck now. Like, yeah. I think that's really cool, and I like the decks because they feel like they have that personality to them, even if they're terrible, awful personalities like Tron.
Yeah, right. Wow, fuck Tron. Okay, but anyhow, I know what you're saying though, because like there's obviously archetypes in Magic, and in Standard, it feels like every single Standard rotation there's that archetype, right? There's some differences, right? Like the Nexus deck, right, which is like you just win, right? It's like a cool combo deck. But it's right. You're like every single time you're like, here's your control deck, here's your stompy deck, here's that. But in Modern, because there's such a long list and huge library of cards, and even it's more crazy in like Vintage and Legacy, but you can just make these very specific broken combinations that don't have an archetype, right? Like they might be some sort of combo deck, but it's like the new Neoform Grizzlebrand deck, which is kind of like that alone, like Grizzlebrand alone is its own weird type of deck that you would never see the archetype of in Standard, which is really cool. I agree.
Yeah, and I don't know. It also feels good because it's you're investing a bunch of money into the decks, but you don't really have to worry about it turning into nothing.
Yeah.
So it feels bad to get a fetch land for like $30 to $50. Scalding Tarn, notwithstanding, but you can turn around and sell those, and like even if you're getting back like 80% of your money, it doesn't feel that bad.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, okay, like if Jace gets banned again, will I feel awful? Yeah, but like Jace will always be used in like Commander and other like formats, so he won't like completely lose his value. Similarly, like if they reprint Jace, how much can a reprinting do to a card that's $130, right? Oh no, he drops down to 100, right? Like he's still going to be worth like a crazy amount of money, and that is nice about Modern. So like, and even it's like it feels like all these Modern decks are so busted in a way that even if they're not tier 1 anymore, they'll still win all the time, right? Like, what is it, like Living End? Like, that deck is, like, kind of bad now, right? In a way?
Yeah.
I don't know. But, like, it's still good.
Yeah.
And, like, same with Storm, right? Like, Storm will still, like, pop out of nowhere and just, like, win games, right? Is it really good now? No, but, like, it can win games.
Yeah. I mean, I don't run a very good deck right now. Like, I do run Mono Red Phoenix, which is, like, a tier 2 deck, I guess, but I also
run 1.5 kind of.
Yeah, 1.5. But I mostly run 8-rack, which I mean that's like a tier 3 deck. Like it's not good. Like it's not conventionally good, but it is a good, like it runs good cards. And I go 3-1 at my shop all the time. I went 4-4 at like a regional event, which I mean for a tier 3 deck, going even's not terrible. And like I'm not great at it either. Like I'm not a great Magic player either. Like you're playing at an average level. That's pretty good for a deck. And I never feel like if you're playing a deck from like MTG Goldfish that like at least has like kind of a community around it that like plays it and tests out different versions, you can expect to do fairly well at some point with it if you're playing well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, not saying like if you're playing like, I don't know, the basic Scape Shift deck that you're going to come out on top at like a regional event or whatever, but I mean, if you're putting in the work, you're playing the best version that you can of your deck, you can do good at a shop or whatever.
Definitely.
So I also do want to talk about, I guess, your competitive career. So I think...
Oh, gosh. Yeah,
so one of the biggest things about Magic that I like is it's a really good outlet for my competitive nature. So we both used to be really into esports. I'm still into esports. But a lot of my competitiveness and where I actually play is now in Magic. And so why don't you tell everyone a little bit about how you got started, I guess, competing. So even outside of esports, just like your history of competing and like where you found your niches really.
Okay, so as like the stereotypical nuclear family, my parents always made me do sports, like literally since I was like a fetus, right? So I like pop out and I'm playing like center soccer, which you can dox me now if you look that up. Played like baseball, even like basketball as well. Like I mean, not competitively, right? But like I had to play these sports. I don't know why. My parents just made me. And then even when I got into like middle school and high school, I had to do track and field. Like that wasn't an option. I had to do it. Like even on the indoors, right? So I had to do like all of this stuff. And so I guess that's like sort of like the built-in nature of just like me being kind of competitive, and that's where I get like the real base roots are. And then like when online games sort of came out, I had just played Call of Duty. Like I was one of those typical COD kids, right, on my Xbox 360. And I always took that like really ultra competitive with my friends. Like I would always try to get the highest KD possible, like one of those people, right? And then finally one day I go onto YouTube and I watch a Husky StarCraft video. And I'm like, this game seems bonkers, right? Like I don't even know what he's saying, right? Because if you've ever seen a Husky StarCraft video, like way back in the day, he's a really good color caster. and StarCraft is really complicated. So he's like saying stuff really quickly and like basically narrating the entire match. And it's like, whoa, this is wild. Like, what's an SCV? What all is it? So I buy StarCraft 2. I go out and buy StarCraft 2 Wings of Liberty. And I'm playing it on like this awful Dell laptop that I was using to like screen record all my awful Call of Duty videos that you can find on some abandoned YouTube channel. And I just started playing it, and I'm like kind of infatuated with the whole thing because I'm playing it just for fun. And then I just start like watching more Husky StarCraft videos, and he does all of his videos based on pro games. And I'm like, wait, there's a pro scene? And then I look it up, and it's like at MLG, and of course, if it's at MLG, it's like super cool, right? And MLG has Halo and Call of Duty too, so it's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So I start watching that, and I'm like telling my friends about this, and eventually a bunch of my friends get into it, and we sort of get like also like incestually hyper competitive with each other. And then sooner rather than later, we're like Diamond League players, and we're like, oh, that's like top like 18% or 10% or whatever that is. And then one day I'm just like playing, and I'm like Diamond top 8, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm doing well. And I got to Masters. And Masters, like, now you like you have all these people who cop out and say like, oh, Masters was top 8% at this point, blah, blah, blah. But I was Masters for like a couple seasons. And Masters is supposed to be top 2% of the entire server, right? And then I went to Europe, and I actually got Masters in Europe as well on the European servers. And I just like, I was in love with StarCraft. And you, Dylan, you can like chime in if I'm like monologuing. But I would watch all the Kespa League matches. I subscribed to Kespa, watch GSL if I could. Sometimes Dylan and I would even stay up till like 3 or 4, whatever time the GSL like Code S matches were on, and we would be like really messed up at high school. But it was so cool because I'll never forget. Was it? Oh god, no, I was gonna. I'll never forget, but no, I forgot. It was like the
Group B.
It was the group. It was group. Yeah, the group.
It was Group B, and it started.
God.
It started sometime crazy, like 4 or 5 a.m. And I actually, I don't know how he did this, but I like convinced my dad. I was like, Dad, I really want to watch this group. Please, I really want to watch StarCraft. Please let me go into school late. And he was like, what? I was like, I want to get up at 5 a.m. and watch this until 10, and then please take me in at 10. He was just like, yeah, whatever, fine. Like, if you're that into it, I sure, dude.
And it was Parting, which was my favorite player at the time. He's a Protoss player who invented a lot of cool build orders, right? Innovation, I think.
Yep.
Flash, and who's the Zerg?
DRG? Or Nesty?
No, it was the little boy. Tiny boy.
Life.
Really young. Life. Yeah.
Rest in peace, Life, by the way.
Yeah, thanks, Life, for continuously destroying my favorite esport. But, and it was like Parting versus... Oh, was it Parting versus Flash or Parting versus Life? But anyhow, long story short, Parting won like spectacularly, and I just lost my mind. It was so sick. It was so good.
Yeah.
But getting off of that, I played StarCraft 2, and that game was extremely hard to play competitively. Like, I had like a whole training regimen and all that stuff, and I won't go on about that. But I started to fall off. One, because I started to lose interest in the game, and the other, it was just too hard to play. So I stopped playing towards the end of Heart of the Swarm, which I kind of regret because I really liked Legacy of the Void. But yeah, so I quit playing then, and a bunch of our friends sort of, transitioned into fighting games. I played a little bit of Street Fighter 4 while I was playing StarCraft 2, and then that's sort of where I kind of made the big shift. And that's a really fun, fighting games are really fun to play with friends. So we switched over to that and played that for a bit, and I didn't do very well in terms of relativity scale skill wise. I was not nearly as good at fighting games as I was in StarCraft. But we mostly just played that for fun, and I went to a few locals in Detroit and tested my mettle there and did horrible. So finally, I get to Magic, and Dylan and I had played Magic off and on for like 10 years, right? And I was like, I'll just try to get back into it. And Limited is like a great way to get into Magic, and that's just where I started, and that's sort of the end of it. I just kept playing a lot of Limited of Ixalan, and here we are today. That's it. Sorry for that long-winded speech.
No, it's good because I think it really shows, I think, a couple things. Like, once you like want to be really good at something, it's hard to turn that off in your brain. Like, I still even get this whenever I play Overwatch and stuff. It's like, I'll play it and it'll be fun a couple games, and then like I'll hit like my 4th game and I'm like, okay, like I really want to do well, and then I'll have to be like, oh wait, no, I don't want to get into this like this. I don't want to get good at it, so I have to like turn that off. So it is really tough when you play something that inherently is really competitive, and to not flick that switch back on. And I think Magic is really good for this because, you know, like we were talking about with like fighting games or StarCraft or whatever, you really have to put in a lot of time to be really good. But with Magic, you don't have to play like 3 hours a day to stay at your best. Like we can play like relatively like once a week or so, and you don't really get worse. Like, yeah, obviously playing more with your deck, trying to understand your deck more, you'll get a lot better. But like you can be fairly competitive and play once a week at your LGS.
Exactly. Yeah, there's like, and I actually had played in Ravnica Allegiance pre-release. I talked to a dude who was like super into the fighting game community around me, and I was like talking to him all about it, and he's like, yeah, like the perfect thing about Magic is that there's no technical skill or physical skill involved with the game, so you don't have to worry about sitting in the lab and just plinking combos for like 5 hours. There's none of that. It's just it helps to play a lot. Like, don't get me wrong, because then you learn. Like, while you play, you learn a lot about the matchups and learn a lot. But also, it's a lot of like book work too. Like, if you can just like watch games or like learn about new things or read a sideboard guide, you can get better just by doing that. But in a fighting game, you can't do that at all. Like, you can like learn new tech. That's what they call it. Like, oh, well, like Hakan can do this weird slide thing into this, and it's like unblockable, right? It's like, okay, cool. I didn't know that. Now I do. But you still got to learn how to do everything up until that point.
Yeah, you have to be able to execute it.
Mm-hmm.
And and another aspect of it is that I guess a lot of like our competitiveness is very similar in the way that like we there's also like a social aspect of it. So like you played StarCraft and I played StarCraft, and I was like fairly into it. I followed the pro scene, but when we became friends, it was like, oh wow, like there's my friend's into it, I'm into it, and it perpetuates it further.
Exactly.
And the same thing with fighting games. Like you got into fighting games, I got into fighting games, our friend group got into fighting games, and it perpetuated it. And it really fell out once, some of our friends started moving away after college. Once we started graduating, fighting games really fell through because we didn't really have that like solid friend community to play the game with anymore. And then Magic, it kind of worked the same way. It was like you were getting to Magic and you were playing limited and stuff, and then like I was like trying to get into it, but then like I hit Modern and I really liked Modern, and I started playing with our friend Ian, and then like we were all playing Modern, and it was like, okay, now we're like super into it because like there's this like friend community that kind of perpetuates itself.
Yeah, it's cool. You're right, because we can talk about Modern all the time. Like I'll be like, oh my gosh, here's this new Neoform deck that looks super stupid, right? And we're like talking about stupid stuff like that, right? And like if you really do like it, like again, I played like Magic for like a year, kind of like by myself, but I liked the game so much that it was fine. I didn't really have anyone to talk to, but it was whatever. But now that it's like I can talk to you or Ian or like anyone about it, it's it's a lot of fun, right? We can talk about up and coming decks or like results, or like whenever like a new set gets teased, we're always like, oh, that card might be really good in that deck, or like Dovin's Veto is like everyone's like, oh, maybe that's running blue white control, and like stuff like that. So it's really fun to like talk. In Magic is of course a very social game, like any of these games, because you have to play against someone. But in Magic, you're sort of like, you're not forced to have a conversation, but you're really forced to know who the person you're playing is in a way.
Yeah.
In StarCraft, it's like all online, or even if it's face to face, you don't really have to interact with the person on like a social level. Fighting games a little bit more, but this, it's like
you say good luck, have fun, GG. That's the extent of it usually.
But like here, it's like okay, let's roll for first. Hey, nice name of the show. But anyhow, it's like let's roll for first. And like sometimes you get people who just want to chat you up and they're really nice and friendly. Sometimes you get people who are awful and don't want to talk, or people that just mumble. And it's like, so in some ways that's fun, in some ways that's awful, but it's still like a very social way to play the game.
Yeah. And so I guess like shifting gears a little bit to round out like your specific Magic, I guess, history and stuff. What are your goals specifically, and like what do you see for Modern specifically? Because I guess where I stand is that even though I guess I would consider myself a spike in terms of Magic, I think that the term that like describes it a little bit better is shout out to the Dive Down podcast for doing this term, but they call it the casual spike. It's like someone who like wants to go hard, but you're not like grinding GPs. But like you want to go to your LGS with like a good deck and do well there.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I am too, is a casual spike. Because like Dylan and I, we go to GPs, but like super rarely, and just kind of for the fun aspect. And I actually have friends who grind GPs. It's just like, and it's cool because it's like they want to get better and they're trying to get better and they're learning. But I don't like think that's for me. And I do just want to do well, and doing well at a local scene and just winning money or winning packs and stuff is enough. But if for some reason, 6 months from now, I just keep going 4-0 at my local scene, and then maybe then it's like, okay, maybe it's time to go to a regionals, right? And then for some reason, if I do well at a regionals, right? Because in StarCraft and everything we've been saying, there is you can have a noticeable progression, right?
Yeah.
And there's a perfect place to play online. So maybe if Arena ever gets modern, because I'm never gonna play MTGO, if that happens, where I'm like, oh crap, I am top tier 10% in the world, maybe then I'll try to make that transition to a real spike. But
I think in Magic, it's probably harder to hit that level than in any esport, just because you are committing way more time. So let's just say for Modern, right? Well, I guess it just applies to everything, because you have to be good at everything if you really want to be like a Magic pro.
Yeah.
You have to be good at drafting. You have to be good at basically every format. So you're playing MTGO all the time, right? You're just grinding games out with MTGO. Basically the same amount that you would be playing any other esport. But on top of that, during the weekends, you're also traveling and playing during the weekends. So for us who, people who have full-time jobs, that's kind of impossible for us to actually try to make that transition.
Exactly. Because it's God forbid you do really well and you make it to Sunday. Well, how the heck am I supposed to finish my game and then fly back from LA to, I live in Michigan, on a Sunday night, right? Without taking work off on Monday. And it's no one's going to have enough vacation days to keep taking vacation days every GP weekend. It's crazy. And no one has enough money to fly like that unless you're a sponsored player or something. So it's wild. It's really hard. And it's it takes a special kind of person to want to do that. And like you're saying, it might be I want to say everyone probably puts in a ton of work for any competitive game they're doing.
Yeah.
But Magic especially, it's you got to dedicate real hours of your life.
And it's also a lot of money dedication too, because not only the travel, but you're making sure that you have the decks that you need. And yeah, if you have a really competitive scene and you have a really good shop that you made a lot of friends with, I know a lot of people lend out decks, or they'll lend out cards and stuff for someone going to a regional and stuff. But that's still you're still putting in money for different decks, traveling, and then on top of that, MTGO, you're paying for the decks there too. So that's a second place you're paying for the decks. And on top of that, you're drafting. You need to draft.
You have to draft.
You there's only so far that just in-house drafts will take you. So it is a huge commitment, and hopefully with the way that Wizards is kind of restructuring Pro Magic, that might be a little bit more viable and easier to do. But if all these pros keep getting banned and stuff, that's going to make it easier for everyone to get better, right? Now that it's gone, wow, that's one spot in top 8 that's normally taken open, right? That's good. That was really egregious, cheating on his half.
I don't know if we should talk about that. It's just, if you haven't seen it, just go look at the images of his sleeves, and that's all you need to do.
All I'm going to say is he deserves everything that he got because he played Tron. So good thing he got found out. If it was a pure deck like Taxes or something, then it would have been sad, but not for a Tron player. So I guess to shift gears a little bit into a different aspect of Modern, the next big thing we have coming out is Modern Horizons, and we are a month out. We're going to be getting spoilers pretty soon. Wizards, it has this really good perpetual hype cycle with their products, which is kind of disgusting and gross, but also kind of awesome. From a capitalistic predatory standpoint, you're this is an abusive relationship thing kind of thing, or not like that, but it's feeding an addiction, right? Yeah, because it's so a month leading up, so a month leading up to a set, right? It's all right, here's spoilers, so you're constantly look at them, you're posting about them, you're specking, you're oh man, this card's gonna be insane and stuff, and then it's all right, pre-release weekend, I'm gonna go to 3 of them, gonna run the gauntlet, do 5 in a row or whatever, and then it's okay, next week it's the set comes out, I'm buying a box, I'm gonna be playing in draft weekend. And then all that happens, and then after that, you're okay, the set's been out for a little bit, I have my new standard deck. And then a week after that, it's okay, cool. And then the week after that, it's all right, well, time to hype this cycle again for a new. Yeah. And you're oh, okay. And then you completely forget about it and jump into this new gear. Exactly. There's so many supplemental products too, where it's
even like the Challenger decks, like something small like that, it's just, still like people are hyped for that. It's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, you get a Rekindling Phoenix in this deck that's $30, and a Rekindling Phoenix is $20, $25. That's crazy, right? So even stuff like that, like, not even big releases, just smaller ones are still crazy cool.
Yeah, but regardless, I'm super hyped for Modern Horizons, so we should be getting the spoilers pretty soon. I don't know if you saw what Mark Rosewater was saying, but he said this is like a love letter to Time Spiral.
Mm-hmm.
In that it's just going to have like a ridiculous amount of mechanics. It's going to have obviously a lot of legacy cards printed into Modern. We're going to see really, I think, probably weird things because nothing is a reprint that's currently legal in Modern. So that eliminates a ton of cards.
Yeah. So sad, no fetches.
Yeah, unfortunately, no fetches.
No Jace, no Lily, none of that fun stuff.
No good reprints that would, help the secondary market or
anything. Nothing to help, new people, get into Modern, nothing like that. Oh wait, but I'm excited too, regardless, just because it is a premium product. So of course, no one knows what the actual MSRP on a pack is going to be since they kind of like removed that. But it's looking like it's going to be like 10 or 8.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I think it's about that because I think between looking at pre-orders and then looking at MTGO, because they did release the MTGO pack price, they were able to figure out it's like about $8, I think.
Yeah, it's like somewhere, like a normal old Masters, like a little less, but like Ultimate Masters, what was it, like 14 a pack or 12 a pack?
I think it's like 12. So yeah, it is somewhere in between, and obviously just because you're not going to have those, like you're not going to have like a Karn Liberated reprint or anything like that. So like hopefully the price makes sense. Like hopefully a lot of these cards are Modern playable. Like hopefully they fit into decks, because like I think the worst case scenario is that this comes out and the cards like kind of suck and we get like 10 good cards.
Mm-hmm. Do you actually know does anyone know how many cards are in a pack? Because master sets have like 2 more cards or something in the pack or something like that. Isn't that true? Am I wrong?
So maybe they don't have a land slot, right? I think the land slot is different.
How many cards in an M25 pack?
I think you might be right that it's different though. I feel like there's more cards.
This is like the weirdest thing to Google because you'll never find it. 3 booster packs. Okay, I am like 98% positive that in master sets there's like a few more commons. It's never more rares or uncommons. I think it's just more commons. But like in a powerful set, that's a big deal, right? Like I think like Counterspell's a common, right, or something.
Yeah, like I mean, I guess if it doesn't get reprinted into a slot higher, then that would be a big deal.
And like Bolt used to be at one point a common, right? It's like, oh great, so you could get a higher chance of like those kind.
Well, I mean, yeah, they when they reprinted it, they printed it into uncommon.
Exactly, and I think Brainstorm is still maybe
Brainstorm, Dark Ritual. I think those are all commons. I mean, still they're commons. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a good set to draft. I think I really think it's going to be a good set to draft. I'm pretty excited about that, even though I'm not a big drafter. I think at least from a sealed perspective, I'm going to like it a lot. And I hope so, because I'm going to go to like at least one pre-release, and then right after that is GPDC, and Dan's coming down for that actually. So we're going to be playing a ton of this set, which, like I said, I hope it's actually good Modern cards, because I'm gonna have all these cards. I want to use them.
That's like, because I was telling you that I was like, well, if Counterspell gets reprinted, should I just buy 4 Counterspells now? But like, I'm also opening a ton of packs, so maybe I'm just gonna get 4 Counterspells, so I shouldn't buy it, right? Like, it was, I don't know.
And they also talked a little bit about Planeswalkers. Mark Rosewater confirmed a few things about Planeswalkers. So we're getting Sarah.
Benevolence, yes.
Yeah, which is pretty crazy, because, I mean, I have, it's not like I've been in Magic for that long, but this is a big deal, I guess, because she just hasn't been printed in anything before. So this is a pretty big deal.
Everyone knows the name Sarah, too, right?
Sarah's Angel.
So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then we get one more Planeswalker.
Who is it?
So there's only 2. We don't know. It's a new character. Apparently, it's new, which I have no idea what that's supposed to mean.
Yeah, I'm not huge into the lore, especially like the older lore. Where it's like Urza was the first Planeswalker and everything was on Dominaria, right? Like, I don't.
Which, I mean, that would have been kind of cool if they like actually printed an Urza Planeswalker in the set.
Besides the one in
the meme one.
Is it Unhinged?
Yeah, it's Unhinged, where it takes you to a website.
Ask Urza.
So apparently, that it just puts a random loyalty ability there.
Yeah.
But they continue to update that. That's like an updated website.
Yeah. I've heard, which is like really unfortunate because the first version of that +1, I think it was exactly 20. So you could get a PDF of it. They made a PDF of it, and you could roll a d20 die if you didn't have it. But now there's probably like more or whatever. Or maybe that was someone's variation of it. But yeah.
Yeah, there's probably like a weird number, like 302, where you can't roll anything for it. But yeah, I'm excited for it. There's been a ton of videos on people like, oh, I think this card should be printed into it. Honestly, I have no idea what any of it means because it's just not in the Legacy. So I have no idea.
Yeah, exactly. Like you see all those like, if you watch like people who like have cards on YouTube or whatever, and they're like going through binders of like stuff from like 4th edition. I'm like, I don't know what any of these cards do at all if it's not in Modern already.
Yeah.
Like, okay, cool, Bird of Paradise, cool. But then it's just like, here's some card from Ice Age. And I'm like, I don't know.
And it's so weird because like so many of the iconic, really good Legacy cards obviously aren't going to be printed in again. Like you wouldn't print like Dark Ritual.
Because that will just make Modern into like that will ruin Modern as a format.
Yeah,
just turn it into Legacy.
And so there's like this weird in between of like, okay, what are cards that are good in Legacy but not too good to make Modern not go completely off the rails and just turn into Legacy? Which I'm still on like the conspiracy theory that they're going to turn Modern into Legacy. Get rid of Legacy and then do Standard Plus. I'm still on that conspiracy train.
No, I am with you, and I don't want that to happen, but I think it will, right? Where they're going to be like, oops, we have too many good cards in Modern. Let's just get rid of Legacy and have this, and then, yeah. And then that way Standard Plus can be an MTG Arena format.
I mean, they're going to have to, right? So whenever MTG Arena first came out, I know they had the older standard cards in there, like Kaladesh and whatever. But whenever they rotated, they did like a big reset of cards. Like you didn't lose your cards, like you got some compensation. Like if you spent any gems on the game, you got those gems back.
I don't know if you're asking that as a question.
No, I'm telling you.
Okay. Okay, you said it like sort of like with a trailing question mark there.
Well, I was just saying things, and like I could just be saying things just to say things, but I'm pretty sure that's how it worked.
You're like me, where you just spouting garbage.
Yeah, and also it wasn't out that long, and so it made sense why they do that. But they would not do that now.
I'm really mad though, because I could have swore when they announced MTG Arena, and then like I was playing like, because I got in really early because I was playing limited, and at the time, if you put your DCI number and went to like the Ixalan pre-release, you got like super high priority to the beta, right? So I was in when it was just Ixalan, which was a really weird thing, by the way, because playing standard in the format of only Ixalan cards is bizarre. But I played it, and I remember them saying, I could have swore, I can't find the quote though, but they're like, oh yeah, in MTG, we basically have to program every single card individually to make them, but in Arena, we're gonna have it so that like the engine is smart enough, like there's an algorithm that will import cards automatically. And it's like, so basically, in my opinion, I'm like kind of a software developer in a way. You could like program something, or like you program a keyword, right? So lifelink, and then now you can apply lifelink to all these cards, right? So it's like, okay, cool. Then you can just import Modern and then get all of the cards. And then they came out and said they're not doing that. I was like,
well, okay, no, that's a little different. So here's the thing with that, though. Yeah, you're programming keywords and stuff, but to program all the keywords and weird interactions with Modern is like insane. That's actually kind of insane.
But in a way, I'll argue, just because I know about software development, you have the rules of Magic, right? So if you make a very, very robust engine, right? Now, I know Magic the Gathering has like the most complex rule set in any game ever, basically. Yeah. That if you program a robust engine that basically is that rule set, right? Like is essentially like a giant branch of if and else's and all this stuff, right? It's going to be more complicated than that. Yeah. But, they're paying software developers to do this anyway. You should, in theory, then be able to just have all the cards.
No.
Right? And that's the thing. And I know they haven't done that.
Well, no, because like So here is like the mechanics that they programmed for, right?
Yeah,
and
right. It's like Death Touch Life.
They
like,
will
blah, blah,
add
blah.
like maybe one or two new mechanics and stuff like that, and it's like this mechanics. To add modern, the mechanics go from this to like programming this. Like it's such like a gross increase of mechanics and like rule sets that like you can't really do it, I think, reasonably. Now, they did give a timeline. They were like, all right, well, if it could take us this long to do each set, and if we went back, it would take us like 5 years to program modern or something stupid.
But that's not even that bad though. 5 years? I know it's like crazy, but it's like this game is like what? How old is this game? It's like 26 years old.
Okay, you're not wrong, but here's the thing. I don't think they like modern that much.
No, because they're trying. Yeah, no, to end this conversation, Wizards just doesn't.
Well, which is weird because like they don't care, but then they're also making sets like Modern Horizons,
which is like really like this is the abusive relationship part where they're like we don't print cards for modern, we just modern self-correcting, and then they're like, here's a card that changes modern that we printed in the set that has literally zero value in this set, but that's why we're reprinting it as for modern. And you're like, what the heck?
Oh,
like,
yeah,
why was Scape Shift in M19, huh? It didn't do anything in that set.
Or there's that new human that's like, it reads something like lands cannot be like targeted or played from the graveyard or something, and you're like, this is literally the most worthless card of all time, except in modern.
Yeah, except it's like, oh, in modern you can run this against Dredge and then they can't life from the loam or something. Like something like that. And it's like, what the heck? This is so bizarre.
Yeah, I have no idea what they're doing. I just hope that modern will still be good and playable, because I don't want to have to sell my decks, because that would suck.
but also, I have talked to you about this. I do think Standard Plus could be fun. Like, it's just because it's another another non-rotating format, and I mean, that's kind of why Modern appeals to you, in a way, as you said before. And also, since it's non-rotating, it is more powerful than Standard. Right? So like, we will, I mean, again, we're going to get to those weird, funky, like, there's a weird combination thing here, and we'll get those weird tropes.
So what you're saying is that if we want this, which we do, we should just play Frontier format.
Or what's like that other one, Tiny Leader?
No, Tiny Leaders is like a
Brawl.
Like, oh,
let's play Brawl.
Didn't they do that for MTG Arena for like one of their weird rotating like events? They added Brawl or something. Wait, well, no, they didn't do that because that's like a Commander variant. It's just Singleton. Yeah, they just add Singleton sometimes.
Yeah, and also like that's another thing. Like Wizards came out and they're like, hey, like we want to add Commander and Brawl to this, but also I guess someone hire better software developers or something like that, because it's like they're like we can't figure out how to add the command zone elegantly. And it's like, really? Like how? It's like, I mean,
maybe they just can't. The technology isn't there, Dan.
It's like Blizzard with their like you can't add more slots to Hearthstone, right? We're just like everyone's like, can we have more deck slots? And there's like the technology just isn't there, and
they had to like break down the program and like change what the program's even based in just to get the deck slots.
It's like somewhere like in the very early development, the entire game is tied to there being like 9 deck slots.
No, that's actually very true with WoW and the backpack. The original backpack, and actually whenever they programmed the game, they couldn't change the slots of the backpack because like somehow like all the code was like built on top of it, and so like if you change that, it would literally destroy like the game. And so they were just like, they're like, we literally can't do anything about this. It's
messed up because that like if you've ever done any programming, you know that just sometimes ends up happening, and you're just like, oh no. Like it just happens sometimes. And sometimes like, it's the biggest MMO ever made, and then there's nothing you can do. But
and you just have to keep adding on more and more content based upon that just like terrible code.
And like League of Legends has like the notorious spaghetti code. It was like made in like Java or something, and they're like just can't change anything because it was never meant to be this big.
I mean, I think that's like just the story of like any like piece of software though, like Fallout, like programming like the trains as like just really fast people underground.
There's like there's perfect software like VLC Media Player, like Google Chrome. It's just perfect software.
WinRAR, just like absolutely godlike, just works perfectly as intended. It's probably just like 3 lines of just perfect God code.
Yeah, right.
All right. Well, I think that just about wraps up our modern talk. So Dan, why don't you give a little shout out? Where can people find you if they want to hear your beautiful voice?
Well, I don't have any thing like this, so just follow Mechado About Nothing. I think that's our Twitter tag.
At
Mechado Podcast. Yeah,
right
something
below
like that.
you.
Oh, but you can go to our awesome website, mechado.moe. You can thank me for that awesome URL. And you can see all of Ian's really funny pictures. But that's if you want to hear me talk about Gundam, I guess. And if you do, contact us. We love our fans. So become one of those people that, berates Ian and I every week. So that'd be really cool. And thanks for having me, Dylan. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I always like talking about Magic and especially modern and stuff. But thanks everyone who stopped by the live stream. We go live for this podcast in particular every other Sunday. So just if you want to keep on top of that, just follow us on Twitter at popped_off. Our Twitch is twitch.tv/popped_off as well. We have a website, poppedoff.com. We put up articles. We put up all our podcasts there. So if you want to keep up to date, just go check that out. But yeah, thanks everyone for stopping by or listening. If you're listening on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, we're literally on all of them. So if you have any podcast platform that you prefer, just search for Roll for First. We're on it. Thanks everyone.